Sage Rollo, why do girls always talk about self-love on social media? You mean like the Jada Pinkett Smith Red Table Talk? Love yourself and all of that. Because okay, so self-love, you mean like appreciate and love yourself, not like self-love, like, you know what I mean, diddling yourself. Primarily it's because we live in an emotionalist time. We live emotion feels before reals. Okay. So the idea, and I experienced this firsthand, by the way, if you guys saw the Crazy Feminist Exposed video on Fresh and Fit, which was a 4-hour long after hours show. And we reached the point of diminishing returns on that show long before we should have killed it right then and there. But that whole show it was interesting because we had some women. We had a range of women from 18 to 33 or 35, somewhere along those. And the women who were 33 and over were much more based than the women who were like, we had a girl who was 18. We had this girl who's a French Canadian girl who was sitting right to my left on the show. And she was a hot girl, blue eyes, very thin, looked like she took care of herself, but she was just there. No one's at home. I was looking, I have the video. I could show you some clips of it, but I think I'm not going to. If you want to go look at it, you can. It was so long and I could scrub through it and show you some points, but really all it was a good example of cognitive dissonance on the part of women, depending on where they are in life. So you had this 18-year-old girl who was blathering on about wanting to be independent and how she was bisexual and how she could never trust any man. And if she wants a man, she wants him to be her equal. And it was all the standard kind of pablum that you get from this. Oh, I want an equal partner, and men need to be equal with me, and I'm independent. And I at one point in the conversation, I'm like, why do you want that? Why do you want an equal partner? Like, you don't need men, but you say you want a man. Well, what kind of man do you want? Oh, I want him to be this. My ideal guy is this. I'm like, well, first of all, that ideal guy will want nothing to do with you. And I'm not saying that to be cruel or, to crush your poor little idealistic soul, but it's true. And I broke it down in no uncertain terms. And I just went from point A to point B, just deductive logic, and presented how it was going to work. And then when you do that, and I did the same thing with the French Canadian girl as well. And so did Myron. Myron was trying to make a point. And I was just like, at one point during the conversation, I'm like, we have reached the point of diminishing returns. And she wasn't even drunk. Like, that chick was like stone cold sober. She had hardly anything to drink. And she would just yammer. She was 28 years old. She moved to this country. She constantly she loved to talk about herself. And it turns out that she was she was a sugar baby, essentially, for some doctor who had brought her to Miami from Canada. And she was like going on about, well, men and women this, and we're not animals, and blah. When I talk about how women have no problem with cognitive dissonance, she's a textbook example of this. And so you could say the sky is blue and she thinks the sky is green, and she will tell you why she thinks that, but the sky is still blue, right? And whenever something works in favor of a woman, especially when it comes to hypergamy in particular, but whenever women confront cognitive dissonance, it's like they have no problem with cognitive dissonance. They have no problem holding two opposing concepts in their heads and going with whichever one is the most expedient at that time. Now, I have said, I think I quoted in this book, as a matter of fact, women have no problem with cognitive dissonance, especially if one of those two competing concepts leads to optimizing hypergamy. So if I get what I want, I'll go with choice A. If I get with what I want, I'll go with choice B. Whichever one facilitates my life and my plan and whatever, I'll be happy to go the virtuous route. I'll be happy to go the practical route. I'll be happy to go and even if those two concepts conflict with one another, it doesn't matter rationally and reasonably that they do. That's where the dissonance comes from, the cognitive dissonance, right? Holding two different opposing points of view. Well, those points have to be, they're not based on feelings. They're concepts based on like logically, rationally, deductively coming to these conclusions, right? Well, the dissonance that's the feeling. That's where the emotion comes into all of that. So when somebody says, well, where'd it go? Here it is. when somebody says this, why are they so big on self-love? Because love is the highest order feeling that women have. So if something leads to greater love, or like Jada Pinkett Smith was saying, it's all about love. It's all about, follow your heart, girl. It never leads you astray. You'll see this in Disney Pixar movies. You'll see this. It's a constant romantic ideal that I talk about in book 4. But whatever leads to that love, like love is love. You'll see that on like placards and stuff like that. You'll see, especially when, when they were pushing for same-sex marriage. Love is love. Well, love is the justification for anything else. That only comes in a society that is primarily based on emotion. Love justifies anything whatsoever. If it gets to love, then we're okay. That's why in book 4, if you've read book 4, you'll understand there's a whole chapter in there that's called Love is God. Not God is love. Love is God. Now, that was a reversal, of course, of the Bible, right? God is love. I think it's Corinthians or something like that, right? So, but I reversed that because we hold up love as a God. And by that, I don't mean like an actual God. I mean like actually like higher than God. Like the concept of love is what makes things worthwhile. If it was all for love, then it was okay. Oh, I killed this person. Was it for love? Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess you're all right. You're off the hook. Right. Oh, I committed these acts of atrocity, but it was for love, for the true love. Right? Love is God. Love is the feeling, the emotion of love is the highest order, like principle in that. Well, really to the woke mob, but like to a society that's founded on the romantic ideal. Love becomes God, not God. God is love. It's love is God. And that's why you will hear that all the time. Love justifies, absolves, and forgives pretty much anything because love is God. And how do we come to that? We come to that in a society that is based on feels before reals. We prioritize emotion before reason. That's why we are still hooked on the blank slate. That's why you'll still hear women talk about society teaches us this. That's social constructionism. People want to know, like, well, Rollo, what can I do to fight back against that? How do I get masculine authority back? You call that shit out immediately. That's one. You don't use their language. You don't use that. You use now, if you want to actually do something, here's the prescription. Rollo Tomasi is going to give you, here it is, a prescription. You hear that, you do not use the language of emotion. You use the language of reason. And that was the conflict between myself and Myron and this girl, this French Canadian girl, where she was proven wrong, provably wrong. And you know what she defaulted to? She defaults to, well, that's your opinion and that's my opinion and we can agree to disagree, blah, blah, blah. No, we can't, because you're wrong. Because my priority in this show, my show, and anytime I go on Fresh and Fit, and certainly I think Myron would agree with me, is that we're not looking for what feels good. And I'll show you a little clip here from our good friend Michaela Peterson here a little while. I'm not trying to shit on her. It's not her I want to focus on. It's the guy she's interviewing in this. But it's all about, you make people feel bad. Like she's not talking to me. She's talking to this guy, right? And, inadvertently, he's trying to be as polite and as courteous as he can be in this whole thing. But she defaults to appeals to emotion because that's the only language she speaks. And the French Canadian girl that was on Fresh and Fit, that's all she understands. She doesn't understand any other language. Women rarely understand or learn the language of rationality and reason and empiricism. They only speak emotionalese. And I don't mean womanese. I mean like they only defer and default to emotional appeals. So if when a woman can't be right, as I said before, it's like, oh, who hurt you? They're trying to win the argument by reframing the argument to emotional conditions. So an emotionalist can't win a rational argument with emotion and vice versa. So a guy who's like telling you deductive reasoning, he'll say, well, here it is, black and white. here's the stats, here's the numbers, here it is. It's like the laws of physics, and here it is laid out for you. And it's like, well, that's your truth. not my truth. That's when we hear that. Oh, well, I'm living my truth. No, there's the truth. And then there is your interpretation of that. And if you think you are living according to your interpretation of that, well, then we can have that discussion. But the fact remains is that there is no, agree to disagree. Oh, that's just your opinion. No, those are the facts. And your opinion is you can't deal with those. And again, that's that cognitive dissonance there. And when you bring up that topic and when you have that discussion, and it doesn't have to, of course, women are easy to, certainly young women are easy to point this out. Guys do this too. Like the guys who are really sort of aligning with this blue pill feminization, that they've been acculturated and raised and thinking, well, the more I identify with women, then the more they're going to like me. They'll have the same response. Like woke guys, Ethan Klein, woke guys will proceed from an emotionalist basis. And as I've said before, you have sort of these moral absolutists and these moral relativists, and you've got these empirical absolutists and empirical relativists. But it's a conversation of the language of emotion and the language of reason. And when their language of reason is trying to win a debate, it presumes that the emotionalist that they're debating has the same goal of coming to what is true and what is not. What is a fact and what is not? What is true and what is false? The emotionalist, the believer, that side, the blue pill really thinking is this right or is this wrong? Is this my truth or is this the truth? That's a really fundamental difference. So when women default to, oh, it's all about love, that's a reframe because they can't win a rational empirical argument where the goal of that argument is coming to whether it's true or it's false. Now, believers who it's all about love, that's interpreting. Because remember that emotion is not about, it's not learning, it's not rationality. It's how I felt about something. And it's what was the emotional provocation? What is my body? What's the emotional trigger that's, I don't know, pumping adrenaline into my body or make oxytocin into my body or whatever, chemical cocktail into my body. Remember, instinct, emotion, and reason are not magic. They are interpretive human processes. It's how we interpret information. But the problem is we prioritize emotion above everything else. And so that's how you get love justifies everything. So if I'm right about an argument from an empirical perspective and someone says, well, that ain't love, that I lose the argument because the goal of the argument isn't about what's true and false. It's about what's love and what's not. What makes me feel good and what doesn't. So Michaela always starts with this. Oh, well, he's right about stuff, but it seems very angry. No, it sounds angry to you because I'm speaking the language of rationality and reason, and she's speaking the language of emotion. Her point in being in that argument, in the first place, argument, debate, whatever it is, the goal of the debate is to walk away with a good feeling. That's not, I ain't nice. I'll be happy to go in there and piss you off and you can walk away with a bad feeling. But you know what you won't walk away with? You won't be uneducated. You'll walk away with something new in your head. And that's my goal when I walk into that arena. Educate. Is this true or is this false? Now, does that mean I think that emotions aren't necessary? No, absolutely not. I'm an artist, man. I love my dog. I love my kids. I love you guys, man. I love my 1,000 sons. But I love you enough to tell you the truth. And sometimes the truth is tough, man. The truth will set you free, but it doesn't make it easier to swallow. It doesn't make it easier to accept. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to come. It has liabilities and responsibilities come with the truth. And that's the problem. Sometimes they don't feel good.